I picked my grandson up from school as a favor. When my son's wife found out, she screamed, "I don't want that old woman near him again." My son just looked at the floor. That night, they sent me a cease and desist. I cried for days. Then I took out the folder of photos and letters I'd been saving, and I never thought I'd be one of those grandmothers, the kind people whisper about, cut off, treated like some dangerous outsider. But here I am, alone in my living room, rereading a cease and desist letter sent by my own son and his wife. It's been 4 months since that day, and I still wake up some mornings thinking it was just a nightmare. But it wasn't. It was real. And I haven't seen my grandson, Owen, since. Let me start at the beginning. My name's Carol. I'm 68, retired, living in Colorado Springs. My husband walked out when our son, Alex, was just 5. He couldn't handle real life, didn't want the responsibility. One day he said he was going out for a beer and just didn't come back. That was it. So it was me and Alex. Just us. I worked long hours, cafeteria shifts, cleaning jobs, anything to keep the lights on. I never complained. I was proud to do it for my son. He was all I had. And for years, we were close. Not perfect, but close. When he got into college, I cried. When he got that first job in Denver, I cried again. Then came Megan. They met at a fundraiser or some office event. She came from money. Old money. You could tell. Even the way she said hello had a kind of sharp edge, like she was sizing you up. I remember the first time she visited for Thanksgiving. She brought her own wine. Didn't touch the food. Barely spoke to me. I chalked it up to nerves, or maybe just being out of her element. But over time, I realized it wasn't that she was shy. She just didn't want to like me. When they got married, I tried to play along. I wore the dress she picked, sat where she told me, smiled for the photos, even though she made me feel like the help. But I kept thinking, once they have kids, things will soften. She'll need help. She'll let me in. When Owen was born, I thought that was my moment. My grandson. My blood. I drove up to the hospital with a little blue blanket I'd crocheted by hand. When I got there, Megan wouldn't even let me hold him. She said he was too fussy, too tired. I sat in the corner of the room like a stranger. Alex just looked at me and gave this half smile that didn't reach his eyes. That should have been my warning. For the next 6 years, I stayed on the sidelines. Megan made it clear I wasn't part of their world. I'd offer to babysit. She always said no. I sent gifts, no thank you notes, no calls. I never got to be alone with Owen, not once. Everything was through them. Then last March, Alex called me out of nowhere. Said he had a work emergency, and Megan was tied up too. Could I pick Owen up from school and watch him for a few hours? I nearly dropped the phone. Yes. Of course, I said. I tried not to sound too eager. But my hands were shaking after we hung up. I picked out a nice sweater. Baked cookies. I even cleaned the car, like he was the president or something. When I saw Owen at the school gate, he lit up like a Christmas tree. "Grandma," he yelled, and ran straight into my arms. I hadn't felt that alive in years. We stopped for ice cream on the way back to their house. Talked about his favorite dinosaur. He showed me a drawing he made in art class, me, him, and a big red heart. I asked if he remembered the blanket I gave him when he was born, and he said, "That's the one I sleep with." I almost cried right there in the parking lot. When Megan walked in and saw me sitting with Owen on the couch, she didn't just frown. She flipped out. "What the hell is she doing here?" she snapped. I stood up. "Megan, I was just watching Owen." "Alex, I don't care who asked you. I don't want you near my son. Ever." She turned to Alex like she expected backup. He just looked down at the rug. Not a word. Not even a glance at me. I left quietly. Kissed Owen on the head. Told him I loved him. The next morning, the letter came. A legal cease and desist. From them. Stating that I was not to contact their family again. No visits, no phone calls, no gifts, no school pickups. For the emotional well-being of the child. That's what it said. I broke down. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Didn't eat for days. My world just stopped. I kept replaying Owen's voice in my head, that little grandma, and his arms around me. I was grieving, but it wasn't just grief, it was rage, too. Megan was behind it, I knew that. But Alex had signed that paper. My son. The boy I raised alone. He'd turned his back on me. Just like his father. And that's when I opened the folder. I've kept it since Alex was in high school. A collection of things I thought might matter someday. Photos. Notes. Letters from his teachers. And documents Megan probably thought I'd long since destroyed. I never meant to use them, but they reminded me of who I was. What I'd been through. What I knew. Megan had secrets. I knew them. And more importantly, I had proof. They wanted to erase me? Fine. But they forgot. I was there before Megan. Before this perfect little life they built. I knew how it started. I knew what they buried. And now, I was going to dig it all up. Not just for revenge. For Owen. Because one day he's going to wonder what happened. And when he does, I'll have the answers. I didn't go to a lawyer right away. At first, I just stared at that folder on my kitchen table, flipping through the pages every night like they were chapters in a book I didn't want to remember reading. But I needed to get my head straight before I made a move. I started small. I called Alex's old friend Sam. They'd been close since middle school, and I knew Sam had stayed in touch, though barely. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to ask, "What do you know about Megan's past?" There was a pause. "Why are you asking?" I told him about the cease and desist. About Owen. About how Megan went off on me in front of him, like I was a danger to my own grandson. Sam let out a sigh. "She always had control issues, Carol. You know that." He hesitated, then added, "But yeah, there's stuff. Not just about her. About the way she cornered Alex back in college. He wanted to break up once, you remember that?" I remembered. It was Christmas break their junior year. Alex had come home and said he was thinking of ending things. "She's intense," he said. "I feel like I'm not myself around her." Then he got a text. Went quiet. Said he had to go back early. He never brought it up again. Sam confirmed what I suspected. She threatened to ruin him. Said she'd tell people he assaulted her if he left. Said she'd call his internship boss and accuse him of being unstable. My hands were shaking as I listened. "Did he tell you that?" "Yeah." He was scared out of his mind. And then suddenly they were back together. Engaged 6 months later. I hung up and stared at the folder again. Inside were texts Alex had printed once, years ago, when he came to me after one of their early fights. He'd been drinking. Said he was scared of Megan's temper. That she'd smashed his phone. That she screamed at him if he so much as looked at another woman. I told him to get out. He said he couldn't. That she had dirt on him. I kept the printouts. Emails too. Even photos of bruises he said he gave himself falling down the stairs, bruises that didn't look like a fall. I never showed anyone. He begged me not to. Now I had a different reason to hold on to them. Over the next few weeks, I got to work quietly. First, I wrote a letter to their HOA board. Megan was president, typical, but I knew the other members didn't like her. I included anonymous concerns, her behavior, the way she berated vendors, the time she yelled at the neighbor's kid for riding his bike too close to her lawn. I knew exactly which incidents to mention. I'd witnessed them myself. 2 weeks later, she was voted out. No more HOA control. Next, I contacted Owen's school. I used a friend's name. She volunteers in the library. I passed along a package to be given anonymously to the principal. Inside were copies of the cease and desist, along with Megan's signature on past volunteer forms and a screenshot of her social media post where she called public school teachers lazy babysitters. She was asked not to return to volunteer the next week. Then I reached out to Alex's company, anonymously, using a generic email. Attached were photos, Alex and Megan at a private event sponsored by one of his firm's competitors. It wasn't illegal, but it looked bad. Especially with the donation receipts I'd pulled from a shared family folder they forgot I still had access to. He didn't get fired, but I heard he was moved to internal projects. A demotion, basically. Still, none of that compared to what came next. I filed a formal petition with family court requesting grandparent visitation rights. I used the folder, everything in it, to build my case. I laid it all out. Megan's manipulations, the emotional abuse, the way she isolated Alex from his only family. I included the photos of Owen and me, his drawing, my history as a caregiver, my clean background. It took 2 months for the court to respond. Megan and Alex were served. Megan called the next day from an unknown number and screamed into the phone, "You think you can threaten me? You think you can take him away?"
I didn't yell back.
I just said, "You already tried to take everything. Now you'll see what that feels like." She hung up. I knew this wasn't over. In fact, it was just getting started. Because what I hadn't told them yet, the thing I kept close to my chest, was that the folder wasn't all I had. There were videos. I didn't expect the videos to matter so much. I'd taken them years ago, not even on purpose. Just little clips on my old phone back when Alex and Megan were still dating, and they'd come over for dinner now and then. I'd film Owen toddling around the living room or Alex laughing at something on TV. Megan was in the background of a few. Not smiling. Not talking. Just watching. Always watching. But 2 of those clips were different. In the first one, Alex and I were out on my back deck. He didn't know I was recording. I had the phone pointed at Owen playing in the yard. In the background, you can hear Alex say, "She threatened to call the cops on me if I left. Said she'd say I hit her. I didn't. But she'll make people believe it." In the second clip, taken a few months later, he says, "I can't breathe in that house. She checks my phone. She goes through my drawers. I told her about that party in college, how I drank too much, and now she holds it over my head." That was the bombshell. Because I remembered what he was talking about, a night during sophomore year when he passed out drunk at a party. Megan had picked him up. Nothing happened, but he always said it was one of his lowest moments. Private. Shameful. Now she was using it to keep him in line. I had my lawyer include the videos in the court filing. That's when everything cracked open. Megan responded by accusing me of harassment, stalking, and emotional manipulation of the child. She included screenshots, doctored, obviously, of text messages I supposedly sent to Owen's school and neighbors. But her mistake was underestimating me. I had everything documented. Timestamps. IP addresses. Witnesses. She overplayed her hand. Then came the twist I never saw coming. Alex reached out to me. He didn't call. He showed up on my porch.
Pale. Thin.
Looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "I didn't know about the court filing," he said. "Megan handles all the mail. I only found out when her lawyer called me. I opened the door, but I didn't invite him in. Just stood there. She told me you forged those videos," he added. "But I saw them. I know they're real. I remember saying those things." He looked like a man barely hanging on. "She's got control of everything. My paycheck. Our joint accounts. I tried to leave once. She called my boss and said I was unstable. She even told Owen I was dangerous when I raised my voice during an argument. I didn't touch her, Mom. I never did. I still didn't say anything. Just let him talk." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was weak. I didn't protect you. I didn't protect Owen either." That night, I got a call from my lawyer. Megan had suddenly agreed to mediation, a move that usually means someone knows they're cornered. But that wasn't the biggest shock. 3 days later, I got another letter. Not from Megan. From Alex. It wasn't legal. It was personal. A full confession, handwritten. He admitted everything. How Megan manipulated him from the start, how she'd isolated him, how he'd been too afraid to push back. How he let her turn him against me to keep the peace. How, deep down, he always knew I was right. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote. "But I want to be free. And I want Owen to know who you are." 2 weeks after that, Megan was served again. This time with divorce papers. The moment I'd hoped for. The moment I feared would never come. But I also knew it wasn't over yet. Because Megan was never the type to go quietly. After Alex served the divorce papers, everything changed overnight. He moved into a rental unit across town. said he needed space, but also needed to protect Owen. Megan went ballistic. She filed an emergency motion claiming Alex was mentally unwell and a danger to their child, citing his confession as proof he was unstable. She tried to get full custody immediately, but the judge wasn't new to this game. Between the videos, the court's growing file of her aggressive behavior, and her own contradictory statements, her motion was denied. In fact, the court began reviewing Megan's conduct more closely, especially the way she handled Owen. Things like controlling his schedule, punishing him for missing piano practice, not allowing sleepovers with school friends. One report from his school counselor mentioned he had trouble expressing emotion without anxiety. Alex, for the first time, began speaking up in court. Slowly at first, like he was waking from a long sleep. But his voice grew stronger. He admitted he'd been manipulated, that he hadn't protected his son, that he was now trying to do the right thing. Megan retaliated fast. She showed up at my house one night around 10:30, screaming in my front yard. I stayed inside, watched from the window while she pounded on my door and yelled about how I'd poisoned her family. I called the police. They came, took a report. She was gone before they arrived, but it was enough to file a harassment complaint. It also helped me in court. The judge ordered a psychological evaluation for both parents. That's when Megan started to unravel publicly. At the next court date, she broke down crying, said everyone was turning against her, that she was losing control. She tried to claim Alex and I were conspiring to make her look crazy. The judge reminded her that the custody issue was about Owen, not her pride. Then, for the first time I saw it, the look of someone who realized their power was slipping. That same week, Alex got temporary joint custody. Megan was forced to allow supervised visits between me and Owen. The first time I saw him again, he ran to me. "Grandma," he shouted, just like before. We sat on a park bench while a court-appointed monitor sat nearby, mostly pretending to read. Owen pulled a little envelope from his jacket. Inside was a crayon drawing me, him, and his dad, holding hands. Megan was nowhere on the page. I nearly broke. I held it together just long enough to kiss his forehead and whisper, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." But deep down I knew Megan wasn't done. She still had money, still had friends in the right places. She'd been preparing for this kind of war her whole life. And if she wanted a war, I was ready. Because what she didn't know, what I hadn't told Alex yet, was that the folder had one last piece. A document signed years ago, back when they were trying to buy their first house. A financial agreement, signed by Megan, one that could expose her for who she really was and just how much she'd lied to stay in control. The paper was plain, just a single page. A financial disclosure agreement Megan had signed back in 2014 when she and Alex were engaged and applying for a home loan. She'd claimed her family was gifting them the down payment, $80,000. But I knew the truth. I was the down payment. Alex came to me back then, ashamed and desperate. Megan had maxed out their cards, planning the wedding. Her parents refused to help. He said, "It's temporary. Just a loan. I'll pay it back." I didn't hesitate. I withdrew money from my retirement savings, wrote the check, and gave it to Alex under one condition. Make sure she signed something.
He did.
Megan signed a statement saying the money came from me, that it was not a gift, that it would be repaid if the marriage ended within 10 years. It had only been 9. I brought it to my lawyer. We amended my petition, not just for visitation, but for repayment of the $80,000. Megan had lied on their mortgage paperwork, claiming the money was a family gift. Technically, that meant she committed mortgage fraud, and the bank would be very interested in that. We filed both motions. It took only days for Megan to respond. Not with anger this time, panic. Through her lawyer, she offered to drop the custody fight, allow unrestricted visitation, and sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement. She was terrified of that paper going public, not just because of the fraud, but because her image, the tightly polished suburban queen, would crack. But I didn't take the deal. Instead, I told Alex everything. Showed him the document. Told him about the money, the lie, the fraud. I made it clear. I wasn't doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it so Owen wouldn't grow up thinking silence equals peace. Alex broke down. I had no idea, he said. I thought her parents helped us. She made sure you did, I replied. Alex went back to court and used the disclosure agreement as leverage. His lawyer filed a motion alleging fraud and misrepresentation. The bank got involved. Suddenly Megan was facing more than just a custody loss. She was looking at criminal liability. That's when she folded completely. Full custody was awarded to Alex, with me granted regular unsupervised grandparent visits. Megan was given limited visitation, pending a full psychological assessment and parenting class completion. She moved in with a cousin out of state, sold her SUV, dropped off the social scene. The neighborhood group chats stopped mentioning her name. She became a ghost.
And Owen?
He's 8 now. We go to the zoo every other Saturday. He calls me every week. Last Christmas, he made me a little clay ornament that said, "Best grandma ever." Sometimes Alex comes too. He's different now. Less hollow. He got a new job, nothing fancy but honest.
We don't talk much about the past.
But one night, he brought over a check. $80,000. Paid in full. I didn't cash it. It's framed on my wall. Because I didn't want the money back. I wanted my son to know what loyalty costs and how good it feels when someone finally chooses you. Megan tried to erase me. Now I'm the one writing the story. And I made damn sure Owen knows every word.